Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. You are checking out an updated Magicka Nightblade PvP build. I'm calling this build the Phantasm, and this is updated for the Elsweyr chapter in ESO. And if you can't tell, I'm pretty excited about playing this build because Magicka Nightblade is actually fun again. Yes, can you believe it? It's been so long. Well, after a lot of changes to the Nightblade class skills, I think I figured out something that actually works really well for PvP. I have easy access on this build to Major Expedition. We've also got amazing survivability. We've got 15% damage mitigation, as well as constant major evasion for that AoE damage reduction. Plus we're a Nightblade, so you know we got that cloak stealth gameplay covered. We're also using 2 damage based sets for some very juicy burst combos. So if you're interested in the Magicka Nightblade playstyle and how it has adapted to the Elsweyr chapter, I think you're gonna enjoy this video. So let's jump right into it. Magicka Nightblade for Elsweyr. Let's go. All right, back on the Magicka Nightblade. I am psyched, you guys. This build is fun. We'll go over the stats first with the usual disclaimer that I'm not completely min-maxed on this build quite yet. I don't have perfect traits, for example, missing a few impen pieces, and I do not have my Undaunted maxed out, so your stats can definitely improve from what I have here, so just consider this to be a baseline for the build, and you can always increase your stats from there. But with our potion, let's go ahead and activate that. Sitting at about 37,000 max Magicka, 18,000 health. That'll jump up to about 22,000 in PvP. 14,000 max stamina, looking pretty good. Our Magicka recovery is about 1,600. Stamina recovery looking good at 900. Our spell damage does go up with a Berserker glyph on our back bar, so very close to 3,000 spell damage fully buffed on this build. 52% spell critical is looking solid. For the resistances, those do go up with our Shadow passive, which brings us to about 18,000 and 16,000. That's in light armor and 1,800 crit resistance. Now I do have all my points into max Magicka on this build, very important, as well as I am using the purple tri-stat food, also super important to get the most stats possible. This gets your stamina especially to a very respectable level that you will need for PvP, whether you're playing in a CP campaign or no CP battlegrounds. Definitely want to use this food now, especially considering that they nerfed drinks like Witch Mothers. I like to run the Lover Mundus on this build just for the extra damage. I think it's helpful. On Nightblade, on Magicka Nightblade especially, some of our healing actually does come from our damage, so the more damage we do, sometimes the more healing we get back. Now, I am a vampire just on this character. I like vampire personally. For the extra recovery, it gives you 10% bonus to Magicka and stamina recovery, which is great for PvP. You also get the Undeath passive, which lets you take a little bit less damage the lower health you have. But you will take more damage from things like Dawnbreaker of Smiting, so keep that in mind. But I think if you're playing a Nightblade, a Magicka Nightblade, with this particular playstyle where we have a lot of speed and we have a big uptime on cloak, then there's really no downside because you shouldn't be getting hit all that often. Mina Berserk is back. We'll talk about that. And then for our potions, extremely important. We are using Essence of Spell Power. This gives us our 20% spell damage as well as 10% bonus to crit. That's because I'm not running those as buffs on my character. So I do need to pick those up from potions. And then lastly, let's talk about the race. I prefer the Breton for this Magicka Nightblade build because the passes are just amazing. You've got the 2,000 max Magicka. You've got a big chunk of spell resistance, which can go even higher than this. 100 extra magic recovery is actually really helpful. But then the cost reduction, you guys, 7% cost reduction is great for PvP, especially on the Magicka Nightblade, where you need to cast a lot of skills constantly. You're always casting on this build, whether it's damage or buffs that you're trying to keep up. So the extra 7% really does add up and is really helpful. So let's talk about the sets I am running next. First 5-piece set, I am using Skooma Smuggler, which drops in Reaper's March. This is a light armor set. Gives you max Magicka bonus, Magicka recovery, spell damage, all really good stuff. But then for the 5-piece bonus here, whenever you drink a potion, you gain Major Expedition for a full 30 seconds, and that's a 30% buff to movement speed. So when I talked in the intro about this build being fast and just feeling really good, this is where that happens. The Major Expedition is huge for this build because it's really hard to get this now on a Magicka Nightblade otherwise in the Elsweyr chapter. I mean, unfortunately, the developers decided to remove this from a lot of the Nightblade toolkit. I mean, the Morph of Blur no longer has Major Expedition. Cripple no longer has Major Expedition. So when I first jumped on the Magicka Nightblade, it just felt really slow and really clunky. And I was looking for ways to get that uptime on Major Expedition. You do have things like Race Against Time, but that's only a short duration. And I felt like I just wanted a passive speed boost. I wanted to be really fast on my Nightblade again. And so this felt really good. I feel like a Magicka Nightblade again. Basically having Major Expedition whenever I want. I can go in Cloak and still be super fast. This is the survivability. So if you play correctly as a Magicka Nightblade using this combined with the skills that we have, your survivability is amazing. So definitely think about picking up this set, trying it out if you haven't. It's a lot of fun to have access to this again in PvP. Like I said, it's from Reaper's March, pretty easy to farm, or you can buy it actually on Guild Traders super cheap. I think I got the whole 5 pieces here for less than 15, maybe even 10,000 gold from Guild Traders. So definitely check it out. It's worth it. And let me just show the effect here. So got my potion. I don't even need to be in combat. I just pop that potion. And now I have Major Expedition very fast, even in Cloak. So there you go. This is a light armor set. You want Impenetrable for the traits if you can manage that. Max Magicka as the enchantment here. I believe I'm running 3 pieces on the body and 2 pieces on the jewelry. So for our next set, I have the survivability, I have the speed that I wanted, and the next thing I wanted was damage. And so a very interesting way of picking that up, kind of a classic proc set for the Magicka Nightblade, is going to be Kalurian's Legacy. This is from the Dragon Bones DLC. I believe it's Fang Lair is the name of the dungeon, so you will need that DLC if you're interested in this set. But I definitely recommend checking it out because it's a lot of fun. The bonuses here are Spell Critical, Spell Damage, Spell Critical again, and then for the 5-piece, a very solid 18,000, almost 19,000 damage every 10 seconds when you deal critical damage with a single target ability. So if you understand the Nightblade and skills on the class and how they work, you probably get that this is a great set to run on Magicka Nightblade because we have 100% access to critical strikes with our Cloak. So whenever I'm in Cloak, my next damage attack is going to be a critical strike, and that's going to proc Kalurian's Legacy. Again, it does have a 10-second timer, so that's something you need to keep in mind. Now, since this is a proc set, I've also decided just to run this on my back bar. So I'm using the Kalurian's Legacy Restoration Staff on my back bar. That's going to be 2 pieces. That's worth 2 pieces, and then I just have 3 pieces, either on the body or the jewelry, however you manage to get those. If you can get it or even transmute it, Infused is going to be the best trait on your Restoration Staff. That's because we have the Berserker Glyph there on the back bar. That's going to give us over 500 spell damage fully buffed for 5 seconds, and we can recast that every 5 seconds. So just to show you the proc on Kalurian's, what it looks like, you are going to typically enter Cloak, hit direct damage, and then there you can see it hit for about 17k on my target skeleton. In PvP, it's obviously going to be less, but what I see typically is like 4k minimum to upwards of like 7k, just depending on the target. Generally, you'll be around like 5 to 6k on that proc. So yes, definitely think about backbarring it if you can get that Restoration Staff. It won't be terrible if you can only pick up body pieces. You'll just have the proc active on both bars. Still manageable. Now for our monster set here, I decided to go with Slime Craw. What Slime Craw does for us is it gives us a nice bonus to spell critical. And then for the 2-piece bonus, we get Minor Berserk back on the Magicka Nightblade at all times. That's 8% damage increase. Now, Minor Berserk was part of the Nightblade toolkit since the beginning of the game, and that did get nerfed in the Elsweyr chapter. So I thought for this build, I still wanted to have pretty bursty damage. I wanted a lot of burst potential still and high damage tooltips and things like that. So I decided to bring back the Minor Berserk. This is in addition to what we have now, Minor Vulnerability from Lotus Fan. So you could actually say that this build hits harder now than it has in previous patches because we have 8% damage received by the target from Minor Vulnerability, and then we have Minor Berserk, 8% damage done. So it's just a very damage-focused set, and I think it fits well on the Magicka Nightblade where you're just trying to burst down the target as quickly as possible, get back into stealth, and then reposition and find a new target. So it's great. So I am using Slimecraw on the head and shoulders. Currently I'm using the heavy helmet and a light shoulder. You can also decide to go heavy helmet and medium shoulder for 5-1-1 passives, or heavy on both to do 5 light and 2 heavy. It's up to you. As far as traits for your gear here you want, I would recommend 5 impenetrable and 2 well fitted. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't have the best traits. Max Magicka enchantments for everything will be ideal. And then for our jewelry here, I'm doing all arcane. I have 2 smugglers. I have 1 Calorian Legacy ring I was able to pick up. Those are all arcane. I have 1 spell damage enchant. I have 1 Magicka recovery, and I have 1 stamina recovery. Stamina recovery on a Breton feels a little bit low. That's why I added the stamina recovery glyph. If you don't have any problems with that, you could obviously change that to spell damage for even more damage on your build. So we covered everything through the back bar. I showed the Calorian's Legacy Resto Staff, again infused on the back bar. That just leaves us with our front bar, since we only need Calorian's Legacy active on the back bar. That frees up our front bar weapon, and so just a very easy thing to put here is going to be an Inferno Staff of Willpower. I've transmuted this to Nirnhone for some extra spell damage, and this just gives us a flat 1451 Magicka on the front bar. Just gives us a little bit of extra damage potential and healing while we're active on our front bar, which is where we are most of the time. For the glyph here, I do like Absorb Magicka as the enchantment. This is great, especially if you're playing in no CP or battlegrounds. The extra sustain is going to be very helpful because you're doing lots of light attacks on the Magicka Nightblade. So I think that covers all the different gear sets we've got going on here. Let's go ahead and jump to the skills next and explain what we got going on the front bar. This, again, is our Inferno Staff, the Willpower Inferno Staff. So starting off with Impale, this is just a great execute, you guys. It's not quite as good as the Sorcerer, Magicka Sorcerer execute, but it's probably second to that. Does tons of damage when they're in execute range, and that's 25% health or less. And this also has max range, 28 meters. So you can cast this really far back. So even if you're not even close to your target, you can still be executing them for tons of damage. So great skill on the front bar. It also gives us some important assassination passives. Next up, we got Harnut's Magicka. This is just a damage shield on our front bar. This does give us a little bit of Magicka back when we take damage. So it will help with sustain for ranged fights. And it just takes a little bit of the pressure off when you're on your front bar taking damage. On our back bar, we have Cloak, so we can cloak away. But if we are stuck here on our front bar, you just want to shield up, absorb some of that damage, and then you can do what you need to do to survive from there. Speaking of survival, we've got Mass Hysteria. This is a great defensive skill on our front bar. But it can also be used as part of a offensive combo, and that's because this stuns now up to 6 enemies for 5 seconds. This got buffed in Elsweyr. I think it used to be 2 targets got feared, and now it's 6. So this is absolutely a massive buff. This is amazing. So yes, you can use this defensively, or you can use it as part of a burst combo for that stun, and then just finishing off your enemy from there. So next up, we've got Swallow Soul. This is our spammable DPS skill for the Magicka Nightblade. It does a good bit of magic damage while also healing us with a nice heal over time for 10 seconds. I really like this because you can do this both from range and in melee, and for that passive healing. Now, you could think about slotting your melee spammable here, which is Concealed Weapon, which does slightly more magic damage. It also makes you a little bit faster while in cloak. But the reason why I want Swallow Soul here instead, and something very important to understand, is it's for our siphoning passive. This is the only siphoning skill I have on my front bar. And because of that, we're able to pick up the Magicka Flood passive, which increases our total max Magicka. So yeah, you can juggle your skills around. You can slot something else if you want, but just make sure you have a siphoning ability on your front bar. That way you get that extra 8% max Magicka. It's really important. Merciless Resolve then is next on our front bar. Like we mentioned, this doesn't give the Minor Berserk anymore, but it still is a great burst skill. The Assassin's Will bow proc does close to 20k Magicka damage after 5 light attacks, and you charge that up. And the new part of this ability is that each stack, up to 5, now gives you damage mitigation. So it reduces your damage taken by 3% for every light or heavy attack up to 5 times. So 5 stacks times 3%, that's a total of 15% damage mitigation. So not only is this build extremely fast, it also has great survivability because we have just a flat 15% damage mitigation up anytime you want it, basically. As long as you have those 5 light attacks stacked up. As long as you're in combat, this buff will stay. Those stacks will stay and give you the 15% mitigation passively. Now, I don't know if that's a bug or if that's intended, but the way it works now is it will stay as long as you're in combat, whether or not the buff drops off. So you now get to decide, well, do I want to be really tanky for now, or do I want to blow it all on a burst attack and fire that bow? It's up to you. Now for the front bar ultimate, I have Soul Harvest slotted here on the front. Gives us pretty decent magic damage, but why we like it is it increases our damage against the target by 20% for 6 seconds. So if you don't finish off the target, then you have that 6-second window pretty much to do 20% more damage. And if you're playing it how you should be, then your target's going down. This is also now the only class skill for Nightblade that applies the Major Defile. So this did get nerfed for the stamina version of the morph for the Incap Strike ultimate, but Soul Harvest still gets Major Defile, which is really good. This is great on your tankier, your healing targets, Magicka Templars, Magicka Wardens, Stamina Wardens, Stamina DKs. You want access to that Major Defile, and you have it for an easy 70 ultimate. You also get 10 ultimate per kill while you're on your front bar, so this ultimate is great. Switching to our back bar now, this is our Restoration Staff bar. First up, we've got Shadowy Disguise. This is our cloak, 3-second cloak. Like we said, this combined with our extra movement speed just makes it really easy to stay alive here on the Magicka Nightblade build. But this is also generally how you can start a burst combo. So we'll talk about that in a second. Next up, we got Lotus Fan. Lotus Fan is our gap closer. Does magic damage as well as now in the Elsweyr chapter, it applies the minor vulnerability debuff. So that's 8% damage taken on your target for 8 seconds. You can see the AoE portion of this got buffed through the roof. 10k tooltip there, unbuffed. Leaping into a crowd is actually not a bad idea on this build. You have so much damage mitigation. You probably won't take that much damage and you'll be dishing out a ton of pressure. But the way that I like to use this and why I have it on the back bar is because, again, I have Kalurian's Legacy on my Restoration Staff. So that's going to be able to proc whenever I crit. And so I can do a Shadowy Disguise into the Lotus Fan, crit that 100% of the time when I want to start my burst. And then I can bar swap. I can do a Soul Harvest. I can go into Swallow Soul or execute as I need to. You can even fear midway through your combo to get a nice long stun on your target. So I am using that on the back bar just kind of to initiate the combo and proccing our damage set. So the last 3 skills here are kind of flexible, but you want to reserve these basically for healing and for buffs. So what I've chosen here for my next ability is going to be Healing Ward, and I'm using this just for a burst heal, not when I'm under pressure necessarily, but when my health is low and I've gotten away from a fight on the Magicka Nightblade, which is very easy to do. We're fast, we have cloak. You know, if your health is low, just get away, hit your healing ward, and then you'll have a nice burst heal after 6 seconds, basically healing you up to full. So it just kind of is up to you to stay alive in that time. Next up, we've got the new version of Blur, the Phantasmal Escape morph. This gives us major evasion, first off, for 26 seconds. That's a 25% reduction of AoE damage. So when I talked about in the intro how tanky this build feels, the major evasion from this buff is definitely part of that. Like I said, you can jump into a crowd with Lotus Fan and really not feel any pressure because you are taking very little AoE damage when you have your Phantasmal Escape buff going. This also is a great alternative to Race Against Time. I believe it used to give us 4 seconds of that major speed buff, but now what it does instead is it actually gives us immunity to snares and immobilizations for 4 seconds. So only the Magicka Nightblade gets this as a class skill. It's a great alternative to Race Against Time, and you can basically pop that before you go into your melee range, and that'll give you a good 4 seconds of snare and root immunity. So you can basically do whatever you want to. You cannot be stopped when you have this buff going for 4 seconds. So it's great. Like I said, you can slot Race Against Time here if you want. You'll get a little bit of movement speed, but I think the major evasion for 26 seconds is really what you want to pick. It makes your build very tanky, even in full light armor. Last but not least, I've chosen one more healing skill, and this is just a nice heal over time to help keep my health topped off all the time. It's Rapid Regeneration. Very cheap to cast. You can just cast this on your whole group, actually, and have a lot of healing done over the course of the fight. I wouldn't say it's necessary, but it does make the build a lot more comfortable staying alive. Another option you could choose here would be siphoning attacks, just for a little bit extra Magicka sustain if you're having issues with that. But like I said, I like the Rapid Regen there just for the passive health recovery. For the back bar ultimate, I had previously done the Restoration Staff ultimate here on my back bar. That did get nerfed in the Elsweyr chapter. It no longer gives us major protection. So what I like instead is Soul Tether. Soul Tether gives us a nice burst heal, as well as a pretty strong AoE stun. You also get a Healing Siphon, a heal over time for 8 seconds based on how many enemies you hit with the initial tether. But this is just a great ultimate for when you're in trouble on your back bar. Let's say that you are facing maybe a Stamina Templar who's going to hit you with jabs through your cloak. Cloak's not going to help you in that case, but you can definitely pop off a Soul Tether, stun your target, get some health back, get some distance between you and your enemies, and then go into cloak, all the while being healed from that ultimate. So it's a great choice. In terms of the passive abilities here, there are many passives here on the Magicka Nightblade that are important. Master Assassin, 10% spell damage boost while invisible, which we will be coming from cloak. Executioner gives us sustain when executing with Impale. Pressure Points gives us some nice spell critical on the Magicka Nightblade. And then Hemorrhage, we do get 10% critical damage done when we have an assassination ability slotted. So we're picking this up on both bars. Back bar, we do have 2 abilities here, Lotus Fan and Phantasmal Escape. And then front bar, we have 2 abilities as well with Soul Harvest and Impale. For our shadow passives, make sure you pick these all up. They are excellent. Refreshing Shadows, one of the best passives in the game. 15% health, stamina, and Magicka recovery, very good. Shadow Barrier, we talked about this. We get 7.5 seconds of Major Ward and Major Resolve. And I am running 1 piece of Heavy, because that does get boosted by each piece of heavy armor you have equipped. Dark Vigor, this gives us 3% max health, which honestly it's not bad, especially on a Breton since we don't have any passive health gain. I do have 1 shadow ability on each bar to keep that balance. So I've got Fear on the front bar, and I have Shadowy Disguise on the back bar. And then Dark Veil, this just increases the duration of things like Cloak. Siphoning, these are amazing passives as well. Catalyst passive especially, 20 ultimate every time you drink a potion. Remember, we're also getting our spell damage, our spell critical, and our major expedition all from potions. So you want to make sure you are using potions on cooldown. Magicka Flood, we talked about this on the front bar. This is specifically why I chose to use Swallow Soul on the front bar. This is giving us 8% max Magicka from the Magicka Flood passive. On the back bar, we are picking that up as well from Soul Tether, so that's important. Then the transfer passive, we are getting 2 ultimate every 4 seconds. We will be getting that quite often because Swallow Soul is our spammable DPS skill. Now you do want all of your Destruction Staff passives as well as Restoration Staff passives on the build. Light Armor, you'll want all of these. If you're running 511, you can pick up Medium and Heavy Armor. I am running just one piece of Heavy, so I've chosen just to pick up my Heavy Armor passives. I get a little bit extra resistances, a little bit of sustain, health recovery, and max health from those. Vampire, if you're a vampire, you definitely want to pick these up for the extra recovery. We talked about 10% Magicka and stamina recovery at stage 2. Undeath gives us 33% damage reduction. Unnatural resistance helps with our health recovery just a little bit. Fighters Guild, you can actually benefit from these. 9 ultimate when you kill undead, Daedra, or werewolf. That's the Banish the Wicked passive. Mages Guild, not really using any of these, so you can skip those. Psijic Order, same thing, not using those. Undaunted, definitely grab those if you have that maxed out. Assault, you will definitely want Combat Frenzy. This gives 20 ultimate per kill in PvP. So this, combined with our ultimate we gain from drinking a potion, and the fact that our ultimate is only 70 ultimate, means we have a very high uptime on that. Always grab your racial skills, and of course medicinal use, pretty much required on the build since we are heavily using potions. So let's talk about champion points really quickly, starting in the green tree. Here's what I'm recommending if you want to take this into a CP campaign. 28 into Warlord, 35 Sprinter, 49 into Tenacity because you can get some nice sustain on the Restoration Staff with those heavies, 56 Arcanist, 27 into Mooncalf, 13 into Shadow Ward, 37 Tumbling, 25 in Befoul, 19 into Blast, 37 Elfborn, 56 Elemental Expert, 54 Spell Erosion, 25 into Staff Expert, lots of light attacks on this build like I mentioned, 61 into Master at Arms for our direct damage. Everything we do is basically direct damage. 18 into Shattering Blows, nothing here. 51 into Ironclad, 55 into Resistant. Obviously you can put less there if you have better traits than I do. 43 into Hardy and Elemental Defender, 37 Thick-Skinned, 18 into Light Armor Focused. I would put more here if you have the points just to even out your resistances. And then 23 into Quick Recovery. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up this Magicka Nightblade PvP build, the Phantasm. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, as always, please crush that like button. It only takes a second and it really does help me out as far as getting these videos shown to more people on YouTube. So I always appreciate you for doing that. And hey, if you are brand new here, why not subscribe to the channel? It's free and I put out new build videos like this every single week. So even if you're not into Magicka Nightblade builds, there's bound to be something else that you will find and enjoy here. If you're looking for other ways to support the channel, check out the description for more info on that. And with that being said, thanks again everybody for watching and supporting the channel. I appreciate you guys all so much, and I will see you around in the next video. Thanks.